The next transformation we're going to talk about is a dilation. A dilation is a transformation that changes the size of a figure, but not the shape. So changing the size, it can get bigger or smaller, but it cannot change the shape of the figure. So we're going to look at these two things in 1, 2, and 3. So for number 1, if we look at both stars, it does not seem that the size of the stars change, and since the size does not change, this would not be considered a dilation. Now for number 2, if we look at both triangles, this one looks very much like a right triangle, whereas this one does not at all look like a right triangle. It did change sizes, but the shapes are not the same. So since the shapes are not the same, this one would also not be considered a dilation. Now for number 3, have 2 hearts. We have a big heart and a little heart. They do not seem to change shapes, they just seem to change sizes. So this one would be considered a dilation. So we would write yes. So let's look at it on the coordinate plane. So the first example we're going to look at is an enlargement. Okay, and that's a dilation with a scale factor greater than 1. So let's go ahead and list our points. So we're going to list our points A, B, and C. A is going to be 0, 2. B is going to be 2, -1. And C is going to be -1, -2. Now let's do A prime, B prime, and C prime and see how they change. So A prime is 0, 4. B prime is 4, -2. And C prime is -2, -4. Now, we're going to compare all our x's. So here we go from 0 to 0, no change, 2 to 4, there's a change there, and -1 to -2. Now, I know that I can't be adding here because we learned earlier that for translations we add and subtract, and all that does is shift the figure. If you look here, the figure is not shifted anywhere. It just looks like everything goes out and gets bigger. So an enlargement is actually going to be multiplication. And it's going to be multiplication by a whole number. So we're looking for a whole number that I can multiply all of my x's by to get the same thing. So 2 to 4, I know I have to multiply by 2 to get 4. So we're going to take -1, multiply that by 2, which would give us -2. So it appears that our x's are being multiplied by 2. Now let's look at our y's. So we went 2 to 4. So we'd have to multiply by 2 there. -1 times 2 is a -2, and -2 times 2 is a -4. So it appears also that y is being multiplied by 2. Now let's look at a reduction. So in a reduction, things are getting smaller. And so the scale factor is going to be between 0 and 1. And what that actually means is that it's going to be a fraction. Okay? We're still going to be multiplying by the first, like the first one, but we'll, instead of being multiplying by a whole number, we'll be multiplying by a fraction. So let's write down the points. So we're going to write down our A, B, and C. A is -4, 2. B is 4, 4. And C is 2, negative 4. Now let's write down A prime, B prime, and C prime. A prime is going to be negative 2, 1. B prime is going to be 2, 2. And C prime is going to be 1, negative 2. So if we look at the change from our A to our A prime, and all our x's, we went negative 4 to negative 2. We went 4 to 2, and we went 2 to 1. So reduction, I said it's multiplication by a fraction, but you can also think of it as division. So what would I have to divide negative 4 by to get negative 2? It would be 2. Is 4 divided by 2, 2? Yep. And then 2 divided by 2 is 1. So it appears that our x's are being divided by 2. Or you can think of it as the x's being halved. So we're going to put half of x. Now let's check our y's. So we went from 2 to 1. So to get there, I'd have to divide by 2 to get 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. So it appears that y is also being halved. Now, our summary is however x is changing and y is changing, we let it be m, and m is just our scale factor. So the scale factor can be a whole number, or it can be a fraction, depending on whether it's getting bigger or smaller. So we're going to try a whole number, a fraction, and I didn't show you how to do a negative, so we're going to look at that too. So first we're going to look at number 1. The scale factor is 4. So if the scale factor is 4, we're going to take every one of these points and multiply it by 4. So my A prime, I'm multiplying both of these by 4. So that would give me negative 28, 8. Same for B prime. I'm multiplying both terms by negative 4. So that would give me a positive 4, a negative 4, comma, 20. And then same for C prime, multiplying both of these by 4. So that's going to give me 36 and 8. Pretty simple. Now, let's try a fraction. And so if you're not sure how to multiply a fraction and a whole number, if you have 1 on top, it's basically just dividing each term by that number. So we're going to think of this as dividing each by 3. So my n prime is going to be 4, negative 1. My O prime is going to be 0, negative 2. And my P prime is going to be negative 1, negative 3. Now, let's see how a negative changes this. So my scale factor here is a negative 3. So I'm multiplying each one of these by negative 3. So that makes G prime negative 9, positive 6. That makes H prime negative 18, negative 21. That makes I prime 27 and negative 36. Now, if you noticed, anything that was positive changed to a negative, and anything that was a negative changed to a positive. So that's going to look interesting when we go to graph. So that's what we're going to do next, is we're going to graph one that has a negative in it. So let's look at number 10. Our scale factor for number 10 is a negative 1/3. So that means our new figure is going to be smaller than our original figure, and it's going to move in an interesting way because it's negative. So let's go ahead and graph our first figure. So we're going -3, -3. Make sure you label. Then we have 3, 3 is B, and 0, 3 is C. So we're going to connect all of this. So there's our original figure. Now, let's get our image coordinates for our new figure. So basically, I'm taking all of these and I'm dividing them by a -3. Because remember, when it's a fraction and there's 1 on top, we can just divide by that denominator. So my A prime is going to be 1, 1. My B prime is going to be -1, -1. And my C prime is going to be 0, -1. So let's graph that. 1, 1 is A prime. -1, -1 is my B prime. And then 0, -1 is my C prime. I'm going to connect all of these. And as you see, the figure doesn't change shapes. It still looks the same, but it's actually flipped over and shrunk. So what you're going to see with the negative is the figure is going to actually kind of flip, as well as either get smaller or get bigger.